Continuing debate, the Honourable Member for Saskatoon, Grasswood.
Here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good day, everyone. It's my privilege to speak to Bill S4. Before we get underway here today, I want to share my time with the Honourable Member from Tobique-Mactaquac, and we're looking forward to hearing his comments as well as my comments. As you all know, Mr. Speaker, the goal of this bill is to increase the efficiency, the effectiveness, and accessibility of the criminal justice system in response to really the challenges that we had with COVID-19 pandemic, which really has contributed, as we all know, the enormous backlog that we have in the criminal justice system here today. Conservatives, though, on this side of the House have been raising concerns about delays and potential for criminals to simply walk free due to the Supreme Court's decision on Jordan. That decision said no more than 18 months can pass between laying a charge and the end of a trial case in provincial courts, or 30 months for cases in superior courts. We've seen a number of cases throughout Canada provincially, certainly exceeding the 18 months over the last couple of years. So in the interest of serving justice, why would we not implement all the modern tools and resources at our disposal today to maximize productivity? The resources are being considered are amending the process for peace officers to apply and obtain a warrant using telecommunications rather than appearing in person. Expanding the ability to conduct fingerprinting of the accused at a later date. In exceptional circumstances, should fingerprinting not previously have been taken, the justice would have the discretion to determine what is considered necessary in the circumstances. And expanding the power of courts to make case management rules permitting court personnel to deal with administrative matters for accused who are not represented by counsel. We currently have a case in Saskatoon that this certainly applies to, and currently this only applies, as many know, to represented by counsel. Expanding the ability for the accused and offenders to appear remotely by audio conference or even video conference in certain circumstances. Allowing the participation of prospective jurors in the jury selection process by video conference by deemed appropriate if the prosecutor and the accused consent, and using electronic and automatic means to select jurors. As you can tell, some of these modernizations are beneficial from both a safety and a financial perspective. For an example, participating virtually, I think, would cut down on the transportation time and the cost, the resources needed to transport and protect the victim. The transportation costs, as you know, in this country are skyrocketing, it seems, every day, and we all know that, so it's not an insignificant consideration considering the price of diesel and the price of gas, especially in remote and northern communities. The federal ombudsman for victims of crime has raised also a number of concerns regarding the impact of COVID-19 on the justice system in this country, which must be carefully weighed in the consideration of this Bill S4. The Ombudsman pointed out that accessing justice in remote areas of the country where bandwidth and internet access remain an issue could actually have a negative impact on the delivery of justice, and we would not want to see that. She also flagged the issue of ensuring jurors remain anonymous and the potential to compromise their privacy with facial recognition software. For some victims and their families, it is an important part of their healing process to see the accused and the offenders in person or by video conference. In these situations, the use of telephone would certainly deprive them of this opportunity. The needs of the victim Mr. Speaker, must, and I repeat, must always be weighed when considering an amendment to the criminal code. Access to the internet for rural Canadians, as I said, has been a long issue in this country. This current government has promised for years to improve access to the internet, and we know this is a big issue in rural Saskatchewan, where I live, and certainly in remote and northern spots in Canada, as it is blotchy, to say the best. It cuts in and out, and it has been an issue for the last 7 years that this government has been in office. Not everyone has access to the internet. We saw this during COVID, where schools tried to participate in classrooms. Some didn't have access to even a computer. So you can see there are issues with the internet. That is a concern, though, to the prospective jurors to appear by video conference during the jury selection. I must say, a jury summons, as we all know, is a very serious responsibility. When you open that letter up, many Canadians simply, I think, can't take time off, particularly if they're a small business owner. It's near impossible for many to be compensated properly. As we all know, time is money, and for the majority in this country, the two are certainly hard to fit in when you do open that letter and you've been selected for jury duty. Our legal system, without question, I think we've talked about it for the last 2 days in this place, it needs to improve. Bill S4 aims to increase the efficiency, the effectiveness, the accessibility of the criminal justice system in response to the challenges that we occurred over the last 2 years with the pandemic. This bill also clarifies and somewhat broadens the circumstances under which accused individuals, the offenders, and others involved in criminal proceedings may appear by audio conference or video conference, as I have said. I just want to step back, and I want members think about the horrible incident that we had at the James Smith Reserve in my province of Saskatchewan, where unfortunately 11 people lost their lives over a warrant that was out for months on Miles Sanderson. Sanderson, if you recall, became one of the worst mass murderers in Canadian history. That day was September 4th. Sanderson murdered 11, injured 18 others during an early morning killing spree. In total, when Sanderson did die, he had been charged with 125 crimes. 125 crimes. Now, James Smith is a small community, roughly about 1,900 in northeast Saskatchewan. So when we see tragedies like this occur, we often have to ask ourselves, now, could we have prevented this? The warning signals were there for months, if not years. It's not a coincidence that since 2015, the violent crime rate in Canada has gone up 32%. This is a staggering statistic that this government must answer for. The community now is left in James Smith to pick up the pieces of this senseless act. The community has been victimized. Victims should be given at least as much consideration as offenders, but in S4, they're not even mentioned once. This soft-on-crime agenda by this Liberal government is not serving justice in this country. This bill follows other pre-pandemic efforts to modernize the criminal justice system and reduce the delays in court proceedings. Delays in the criminal justice system were already a serious issue before the pandemic. The measures contained in Bill S4 will both modernize and make it more efficient, hopefully, for certain aspects of the delivery of justice in this country. Before I leave, Mr. Speaker, several family members have come forward in recent weeks with the traumatic stories from the James Smith Cree Nation tragedy. Their stories are a crucial part, I believe, in the healing process in the delivery of justice on that reserve. These are people we must be mindful of when crafting carefully this legislation. If we get the bill right, it will balance the need to improve efficiency with the rights of the people it serves, and always consider the victims and their families as a cornerstone of any justice legislation. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The legislation S4, in essence, takes the idea of technology and the experiences we had during the pandemic, that the judicial system sees the benefits of having video conferencing, and it kind of incorporates that. It's legislation that has been here for quite a while now, even predates the last federal election. I understand the Conservatives are going to be supporting the legislation. So they've taken the opportunity to add additional comments. And the additional comments try to give the impression that the Conservative Party is tough on crime and they think of the victims. And they can say what they like, but I think it's important to recognize that I believe all parties inside the chamber understand and have a great deal of sympathy and empathy for victims. We have a judicial system that is there to protect the interests of all Canadians, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's something in which we can be proud of. And my question to the member is does he not feel, given the very nature of the support of the legislation itself, that this is a legislation in which we can all get behind, given that it's important to recognize the technology and the advancements of it?
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon-Grasswood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member from Winnipeg North. I brought up the victims because they weren't mentioned in S4. You know, James Smith Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, it happened September 4th. Now we're at the end of November. Those people for the last 3 months have been victimized more than ever. It's many of their families, many relatives, and we have not spoken to that. Every day in the Saskatoon Star Phoenix or other news organizations in Saskatchewan, they talk about this, the healing process. This could take months, if not years, if ever, that they forget what happened when Miles Sanderson took the lives of 11. We need to modernize the justice system. There's no question with that. I would even say we probably at times should modernize the House of Commons. But we get stuck in our ways over the years and over the decades. But this is one way I think that we can all agree that the justice system needs to end the backlog and get people up in front of the court sooner than later.
Is in comment?